On a quiet night deep inside Russian territory, a massive explosion shattered the silence. One of Russia's most feared bombers, the Tu-22M3, was obliterated on the ground. And it wasn't a missile or a fighter jet that did it. It was a Ukrainian drone. With a single strike, Ukraine took out a $300 million symbol of Russian air power. And the shockwaves are rippling through Russia's military strategy and morale. If you want clear, bold analysis of the world's biggest geopolitical moments, subscribe to our channel and join the front lines of global truth. Now, let's unfold what just happened and why it could change everything for Russia's air war. The Tu-22M3, known to NATO as the Backfire, is no ordinary bomber. It's a supersonic, long-range strategic aircraft, a key tool in Russia's war on Ukraine. Its primary role? Dropping massive glide bombs and launching deadly Kh-22 cruise missiles from hundreds of kilometers away. This aircraft doesn't just attack, it devastates. And Ukraine's cities have paid the price. From Kiev to Odessa, Tu-22M3s have rained destruction across the country since the start of the full-scale invasion. But on April 19th, the hunter became the hunted. At an airbase deep inside Russia, in the Stavropol region, a Ukrainian drone penetrated the perimeter. It found its mark, a Park Tu-22M3 bomber, vulnerable and unprotected. The drone struck. The bomber erupted into flames. Russian state media tried to downplay the attack, saying the aircraft was slightly damaged. But satellite images and independent video confirmed it. This backfire is toast. It wasn't just an airframe lost. It was a message sent, loud and clear, that even Russia's deep strike bombers aren't safe anymore. So how did Ukraine pull off such a precise strike on such a heavily guarded target? Let's break it down. Experts believe Ukraine used a long-range kamikaze drone, possibly domestically made or modified Western tech. It flew low, under radar coverage, slipped past defenses, and hit with precision. This isn't the first time Ukraine has reached deep into Russian territory. But taking out a Tu-22M3 is a different level of strategic blow. Russia's Tu-22M3 fleet isn't massive. Estimates say only 30 to 40 are currently operational, and that number is shrinking. Each bomber costs hundreds of millions, and replacing them is near impossible under wartime sanctions and industrial shortages. Ukraine just made the problem worse. And here's what really stings for the Kremlin. The Tu-22M3 isn't just a bomber. It's a symbol, a relic of Soviet-era dominance, a tool of fear, a message plane. Every time a Tu-22M3 took off to launch missiles toward Ukrainian cities, it was meant to project power. Now, all that power lies in a heap of scorched metal. And it's not the first Tu-22M3 Ukraine has targeted. Back in 2023, drones damaged two others during a surprise attack on an airfield in Murmansk Oblast. Ukraine's intelligence agencies have learned how to study Russian flight patterns, base routines, and vulnerabilities. They're not just reacting anymore. They're hunting. But what's so special about this bomber that made it such a high-value target? Let's take a closer look at the Tu-22M3's lethal legacy. This beast is built for speed, capable of flying at Mach 1.8. It carries Kh-22 cruise missiles, each one weighing over 6,000 pounds and capable of striking targets up to 600 kilometers away. And when it doesn't use missiles, it drops glide bombs, cheap, fast, and devastating. Russia has dropped over 51,000 of these bombs since the war began. Ukraine has no air defense systems that can reach these bombers at cruising altitude. So for months, they've rained destruction with near impunity. But no aircraft is safe on the ground. And Ukraine exploited that window brilliantly. The drone's flight alone was a masterpiece of stealth and timing. It flew hundreds of kilometers through enemy airspace, dodging jamming, interceptors, and layered defenses. But here's what's even more stunning. Ukraine likely used $50,000 worth of parts to destroy a $300 million weapon. Talk about asymmetric warfare at its finest. This kind of strike does more than damage hardware. It shakes confidence. Russian pilots now know, the next time they land, their aircraft might not take off again. And the psychological impact? Immense. Because this strike didn't just embarrass Russia militarily, it humiliated them publicly. Even pro-Russian military bloggers couldn't spin this one. Telegram channels lit up with anger, demanding answers from the Kremlin. This isn't just a drone attack. It's a sign that Russia's air dominance is fading and Ukraine is adapting faster than anyone expected. So what does this attack mean for Russia's military strategy moving forward? To put it bluntly, it forces them to reconsider their entire approach to air superiority. Russia has always prided itself on having the ability to strike from a distance. With bombers like the Tu-22M3, their reach was limitless. But now, their bombers are vulnerable. This vulnerability doesn't just apply to the Tu-22M3. It applies to Russia's entire fleet of strategic bombers and even their missile silos. Ukraine is proving that they can hit any target, anywhere, at any time. And the risks don't stop with bombers. Ukraine's drones aren't limited to just hitting planes. They've targeted fuel depots, logistics centers, and even command posts in Russian territory. These strikes are part of a new phase of the war, a war of attrition, where Russia is losing not just weapons, but valuable resources. Ukraine has turned the tables, striking deep into Russian soil, crippling their ability to sustain their war machine. The logic behind these strikes is simple but devastating. Cut off Russia's supply lines, destroy their reserves, and force them to fight a much more expensive, difficult war. And Ukraine isn't just playing defense. They're becoming the aggressor. But Russia hasn't given up without a fight. The Kremlin has increased its defenses, moving more S-400 anti-air missiles, radars, and interceptors closer to strategic bases. Yet, Ukraine is staying ahead of the curve. Their drone capabilities are evolving faster than Russia's countermeasures. Even with these advanced defenses, Ukraine's tactics continue to outsmart Russia's military doctrine. Take, for example, the role of Ukrainian intelligence. They become masters of information warfare, gathering intel not just from spies, but from open-source data, satellite images, and even social media. Using this data, Ukraine has been able to predict when and where Russian bombers will strike, and they act before the Russians can even launch their attack. It's a high-stakes game of cat and mouse, and Ukraine's drones are winning. But Russia's response is inevitable. They'll likely intensify their use of electronic warfare to jam Ukraine's drones. Expect the Kremlin to try everything in its power to turn the tide. However, Ukraine isn't just relying on one type of drone or strategy. They've diversified their approach, using everything from small, loitering drones to massive, long-range kamikaze drones with explosive payloads. This level of versatility gives Ukraine the upper hand in the drone warfare space. They're not just targeting bombers, they're attacking the entire Russian air defense infrastructure. And in a war where every bit of advantage counts, this versatility is a game-changer. But what about Russia's reputation? The Tu-22M3 was one of their pride jewels, their backfire. Losing it isn't just a military loss. It's a hit to national pride. It makes Russia look vulnerable, and that's something they cannot afford. Let's step back for a moment and think about the broader implications. This isn't just a strategic victory for Ukraine. It's a symbolic one. Ukraine has proven that they can fight back, even against Russia's most advanced weaponry. This could inspire other nations who are watching closely, and it sends a powerful message to the world. Now, let's zoom out and look at the broader picture. Ukraine's victory over Russia's Tu-22M3 isn't just a tactical win. It's part of a much larger, global story unfolding right now. For Russia, every loss like this chips away at their military credibility, and it's starting to show on the world stage. But the question remains, how long can Russia keep up this war? The costs are mounting, both in terms of resources and international reputation. Losing bombers, missiles, and even pilots is one thing, but losing the support of allies is something else entirely. The economic toll is staggering too. By most estimates, Russia has spent over $100 billion since the war began. And with each downed bomber, each destroyed airfield, their ability to sustain this campaign becomes more fragile. Remember, this isn't just a war of tanks and soldiers. It's a war of economies. Ukraine has received billions in military aid, but Russia, in contrast, is increasingly isolated. The sanctions are biting, and their allies, like Belarus, are starting to feel the pressure too. And Russia's loss of credibility isn't just on the battlefield. It's a matter of influence. In the international community, countries are starting to shift their stance on Russia, slowly but surely. When Ukraine succeeds on the battlefield, it strengthens the resolve of the West and other allies. Russia may be trying to intimidate countries into silence, but they can't keep up the charade for long. The world is watching, and Ukraine is showing them how a smaller, determined force can defy the odds. So, what does this mean for the future of warfare? The battle over the skies isn't just about who has the biggest plane anymore. It's about who can outmaneuver, outthink, and adapt the fastest. Ukraine's strategy of asymmetric warfare is rewriting the rulebook on modern conflict. This isn't just about drones versus bombers anymore. It's about disrupting an enemy's core ability to project power. Ukraine's precision strikes aren't just taking down hardware. They're eroding the Russian military's sense of invincibility. Take a moment and think about this. Russia has been able to dominate the skies for decades. Yet, it only took a few months for Ukraine to turn the tables. This kind of disruption in military power is unprecedented. It's a new kind of war where adaptability and innovation take center stage. But make no mistake, Russia is a formidable opponent. Even as they lose ground in the air, they're far from defeated. They still have massive ground forces, nuclear capabilities, and thousands of missiles left in their arsenal. However, Ukraine is proving that strategy and ingenuity can outweigh sheer numbers. And while Russia may have the power to destroy cities, Ukraine is showing it has the power to target and dismantle Russia's war effort one piece at a time. And let's not forget the human factor. Ukraine's people are at the heart of this victory. From intelligence officers in the shadows to the soldiers on the front lines, this war has become a national effort in every sense. Russia's forces, on the other hand, are showing cracks. Low morale, poor leadership, and lack of cohesion are starting to show, especially after significant losses like this. The men flying these bombers are questioning whether their sacrifices are worth it. What happens next? We're on the cusp of a new phase in the conflict. As Russia scrambles to regroup and adapt, Ukraine will continue to press its advantage, exploiting every weakness it can. But don't expect the world to sit idly by either. The international community, especially NATO, is closely watching Ukraine's progress, and some countries are already making plans for what comes after Russia's defeat. This could mark the beginning of a new order in Eastern Europe. As Ukraine's forces continue to adapt, we're starting to see a shift in the way modern warfare is understood. The old rules of engagement, dominated by tanks, planes, and artillery, are being replaced by a new breed of combat, one defined by agility, precision, and tech-driven innovation. And this shift isn't just affecting the battlefield. It's impacting how military power is projected on the global stage. With each Ukrainian success, the world watches not just as a war unfolds, but as a new era of military conflict emerges. Russia, of course, is not oblivious to this shift. The Kremlin is watching closely and realizing that its traditional methods of war are losing their edge. The reliance on massive bombers and missiles, once symbols of Russian might, now feels outdated in the face of agile, precise drone attacks. But Russia's pride is a double-edged sword. It's hard to change course when you've built your entire military identity around superiority in the skies. This is why the loss of their Tu-22M3 bomber feels so catastrophic. It's not just about losing a plane, it's about losing their status as a dominant force in the air. And there's another layer to this. Ukraine's success with drones is not just a military triumph. It's a strategic one that influences global power dynamics. Countries that once viewed Russia with a certain level of fear or respect are now watching Ukraine and reconsidering their positions. Ukraine's success is also sending shockwaves through Russia's allies. Belarus, a close ally of Russia, has already felt the heat, facing pressure from both internal dissent and international condemnation. Their role in the war is increasingly under scrutiny. This could be the beginning of a domino effect where more of Russia's allies start to pull away, just as Ukraine's international support grows stronger. And it's not just the military consequences that Russia has to worry about. The Ukrainian strikes are starting to affect Russian morale. Losing bombers, the very symbol of their air superiority, shakes the confidence of their soldiers. It's a psychological blow that can't be easily recovered from. On the flip side, Ukraine's forces are growing stronger, more confident, and increasingly skilled at leveraging modern technology. Ukrainian troops are no longer just defending their land. They are actively taking the fight to Russian soil, destabilizing key Russian military strongholds. This is a game-changer in terms of military strategy and execution. As the war continues, the lessons learned on the ground in Ukraine could shape the future of global conflicts. We are witnessing the birth of a new kind of military power, one that values speed, intelligence, and technological superiority over brute force and firepower. This new wave of warfare is not just about who has the most tanks or bombs. It's about who can outsmart and outmaneuver their opponent at every turn. So, where does this leave Russia? With every bomber destroyed, with every military base struck, Russia finds itself in an increasingly difficult position, both militarily and politically. They can't simply rely on old tactics to fight a new kind of war. The longer this conflict drags on, the more Russia's strategic weaknesses will become apparent to the world. What's your thought on that? Comment below.